probably before 2017, 2015, that around that time there, soursop was mainly just a crop that you grew in your backyard. Not many people had soursop plots. That wasn't something that you would hardly ever see. You wouldn't see um, 10 soursop plants planted anywhere. You would have one tree behind your house, and in that area, some people would put, they almost had it kind of like a composting kind of area, where if you did, when you peel your green bananas and you had your compost waste from your kitchen, you would go and you would pour it around the soursop tree, and every now and then you would get a soursop, and then you'd make some juice or you'd make some ice cream. It wasn't this sort of industry that we now have. So when we got to actually having full blown soursop plots, we realized we had some different challenges. One of the challenges, even though I'm kind of skipping ahead a little bit, but let's see how the conversation goes. One of the challenges that we realized that we had was that after about 2 years, your soursop tree stopped bearing, or the production was much, much less. It just reduced more than by half. Now, so part of what the Ministry of Agriculture, part of our mandate, is to ensure that emerging industries like that they're successful. So we had to ask, why is this happening? Why is it that you your field was very, very productive for the last 2 years, and then now it's not productive at all, or it's less than halfway? Then we realized, after we researched and did some other stuff, we realized that, oh, soursop is a very heavy feeder. And so your nutrition, your fertilization must be up to par if you're going to be getting soursop on a consistent basis. Now, this does not mean that you must use inorganic fertilizer, right? It does not mean that you have to use the store-bought fertilizer, but it means that you must maintain the nutrition of your plant. So even if you're going to be using compost, if you're going to be using other organic matter, you must maintain that fertility in your soil, because soursop takes up a lot of nutrients, right? So then after a while, if you're going to have um, soursop growing, then your trees will drop a lot of your fruits, drop a lot of your leaves. And remember, your leaves are the ones that make the food that go into your fruit. Your trees will drop the leaves because it cannot maintain all of that, all of those fruits, because it's not being fed properly, right? So when you're going to start your soursop plot, you have to be very, very cognizant of the spacing that you're going to use, right? We assuming from here that all of the seedlings that you get from the Ministry of Agriculture are perfectly healthy. They don't come with any diseases, or they're ready and strong for you to plant, right? So when you get as you prepare your field before you get your plants, you would have to mark out your field, or line up your field, as we call it, between 10 feet and 15 feet apart, right? It depends on how you plan to grow, what's your plan on how wide you let your soursops, how wide are you going to let them branch. It depends on the space that you have. Sometimes it could depend on what varieties you have, but most of the times the varieties that we have in Grenada, that is kind of the spacing. Some people go 8 feet. If you're trying to put in as much as you can in your plot, you can go 8 feet, but you shouldn't go less than that. Because what happens is that your trees are very responsive to light. That is just normal physiology of your plant. And if it is that your trees are very, very close together, where you end up having a small soursop forest. So if when your trees, like these trees here, if you have them too close together, everybody is now fighting for light, and then everybody grows up like this, and nobody grows wide, right? And what you really want, is for your soursop plant, your soursop tree, to grow like an umbrella, right? You want it to grow out. So just say this is half of the umbrella. You want to grow out like this. And then you want the next layer of leaves and branches to be over like this, not over like this. You want it to be in between so that everybody gets sun. That is important because the sun, the response to the sun, is what makes your flowers, right? All of these things is chemistry. This is a plant reacting to things. So when your soursop plant is clustered up, clustered up, clustered up, it's only the ones that are exposed to the sun that will be making fruit. That is why you find when you have your trees unpruned and they all the way up, you would get fruits all on top and you wouldn't get any fruits down in the bottom, because the sun, the response to the heat and the light is what makes your soursops flower. Okay, so where do I go from here? Anybody has any questions? Any questions? Any comments? If you think I'm saying something incorrect or something that you've proven to be something other than what I've said. Anybody? No? Okay. So I'm not even going to speak much about the uses of soursop, because I mean everybody knows. Everybody knows that it's used to fight cancer, mainly. The most important thing, the leaves, the fruit, everything. I've seen some people doing some work on, it's not something that's really published yet, but doing some work on the seeds to see if that if chemicals could be extracted from the seeds also to be able to help in that fight against cancer. Now, you have to be very careful when we're deciding where we are planting soursop, because soursop is very finicky. She's a lady who does not want to be waterlogged. She does not want no water sitting. If you have soil that is very heavy, then you have to be very, very careful about how you manage your drainage, right? So if you know that your soil is very heavy and clayey and that it holds water, then you have to ensure that you have good top drain. You have to make sure you have good drains in between. And one of the things that we can recommend also is that before you go to plant, you open your holes a lot bigger and deeper than what it is you need for this small bag, because when you're planting, your hole should be about the size of the bag, right? But you open it wider and deeper, and you use some compost matter, anything, rotten wood, any kind of compost that you have, and you can fill in that space to try to have an amendment, to try to change your soil, at least for the beginning stages of the soursop's life, so that it can learn how to manage within the soil that you have. But we're going to try not to choose waterlogged areas to grow soursop, right? It's advisable to do a soil test before you plant, just so you know what is there. The ministry will soon have, sometime in this year, we will have the soil lab up and running. It's not functional yet, but we can organize if people want to have soil tests done. It's something that can be done. We also, when we're speaking about the location of your plots also, you have to be very careful about how high you plant it, right? How high your plot is. So in some areas, let's see, like Belvedere, right? Soursop does not do well in those areas because of the altitude. You will get a lovely tree. If you're growing for leaves, then yeah, you'll get a very lovely tree. However, if you're growing for fruit in those areas, it is very, very difficult. It's not impossible, But then you would have to be very, very, very meticulous on your pruning and making sure that the tree is exposed to everything that it needs in order for it to fruit. And then sometimes the cultural practices, all that labor does not always materialize into production. And so we discourage you from having trees in that area. I know that Marlon has some trees in some higher regions, and it may be a variety that can work in those areas, and so that is something that is being looked into. But generally, we don't plant soursop in those high areas unless, like I said, you're growing for the leaves, and I mean, if you have a market for leaves, then that's fine. Yes.
Height in the feet in terms of above sea level, so that
About 400 feet. 400 feet above sea level is the highest you should go. Shouldn't go higher than that. You should also try to make sure that your soil is neutral, not acidic, not alkaline. You have neutral soil. If you have acidic soil, again, you can do amendments like white lime and stuff that can balance you out. Um, so we spoke about. So we're going into the establishment. I mean, everybody knows how, I think. You line up your field, you dig your holes. I said, unless it's what I was referring to before, you dig your holes about the size of the bag, just a little deeper sometimes, so that you can put either your pen manure, your compost, or if you're using um, store-bought fertilizer, you can put some down in the hole, cover it a little bit, and put your plant down. You should not plant your soursop up to here, right? You shouldn't plant it. You should plant it up to where the soil is in the bag, right? You shouldn't try to plant it. Shouldn't try to plant it so that it's down like this inside the hole. It should be where the where this root ball is. Right? There are some plants that you can plant deeper. For example, like a tomato. If you're planting a tomato seedling, you can plant it much deeper because the the stem of the tomato plant would put out more roots. So you could put, but a soursop would not do that. And here you would, as the soil gets in contact with here, the soil and the water and all the microorganisms and so, you may get fungal infections and different things that will damage your seedling. Right? So you plant it. You can, when you plant, you cover, you make sure you press, you can water, you make sure you can mulch, put some, dry grass or some other mulch on top of it if you like, just to ensure that you maintain your water levels. And during the time of the soursop growing, you ensure that you weed, the normal things that we do. Yes, sir.
yes. In planting, sometimes we buy plants and we have it on the ground for about months before we plant it.
You have it on the ground for months. Well,
And
why?
that farmers have to bring
I
in
know they do
something.
that, but why would they do that?
Right. But sometimes when you
Yes.
plant a plant,
Right.
take root in the ground.
Right.
And the top root bust.
Mm-hmm.
When you plant a plant, it's supposed to loosen the root ball, yeah?
Right.
Free up the roots.
Right.
Because if you have it in there for a long time and just plant it, the root tends to
Tend to soak it. Right.
and you're wondering why it's not growing.
Thank you very
Take
much.
it up, the root is confined.
Right.
It's to loosen the root ball.
Right.
Not every
So
plant, but some.
yeah. So what for those in the back, what he was pointing out and reminding me that, well, the first part of it is that some farmers leave their plants without planting them for too long, right? And therefore, your roots start to grow out of your plant, out of your bag, and it starts to grow into the ground. So you have to be very careful about how you take it out. Secondly, when you're going to plant this and you remove the bag and going to put it in, you ensure that you loosen the soil under here so that your roots can get a little loosened so that they can be able to go and establish themselves better in the field. Thank you very much.
You know, Mr. Louis,
Yes.
2 years ago, Daddy and I went to plant nutmegs, eh?
Mm-hmm.
And Daddy was 45 at the time. I never like telling farmers this because I have too much respect for them. But Daddy planted the nutmegs in the bags. He was 45 at the time
Mm-hmm.
and he grew up farming. So I would not disrespect the farmers by saying take up the bags. But at the same time, sometimes certain things are just things.
Yes.
So
Thank you very much. So please remove the bag. Don't plant the bag. Don't plant the plants with the bag. You need to remove the bag to ensure that your roots can get out and it can establish itself properly. Now, fertilization. I know some people like Miss Duncan here, it's an organic enterprise, so no artificial fertilizer. But of course, there's fertilization because you're feeding your soil and you're making sure that your soil is properly amended. But if you're going to be using fertilizer, when you're going to plant, you use 1 teaspoon of TSP, right? Triple superphosphate. And that is because triple superphosphate is specifically for root development, right? 1 teaspoon. 1 teaspoon. Not a tablespoon, not a half cup, not a cup. 1 teaspoon. That is about the amount in a bottle cap, just to give you an idea, right? Farmers, I'm not sure if farmers other places, 1 teaspoon per plant because it's granular. Okay. Yes. So farmers in Grenada, I don't know about farmers in much other places, but in Grenada, we like to what we call throw. We like to throw fertilizer. No? We like to throw some manure. We like to throw. No, this is not good for your plant. Neither is it good for your pocket, which is, I think, something that I really need to think about. Because when you're going into when you're planting, you can't just be planting for style. That means that it's a hobby and it's not your work. If it's your work, then you have to always think about how to manage your costs. And if the plant cannot take a half, the plant cannot take a tablespoon, why are you putting half a cup? The plant cannot use it. It's not that it is just going to be there and stay there and the plant is a glutton that is just going to, as much as you put, it's going to take up. That is not what's going to happen. Plants are organisms that work on balance. And when they take up enough of what they need, they don't take the rest. They leave it and it's either washed away or it stays in your soil and it's just wasted. So that will help you to reduce your cost if you ensure that you're using the correct amount of the fertilizer that you're supposed to be using. So in the first things, it's all in the book. So you will, if you don't get a paper copy, we also have it. I could send it on WhatsApp. You could always get a virtual copy, if not a digital copy, sorry. So, like I said, 1 teaspoon, right? Sorry, I was wrong. 1 tablespoon of TSP. That's your dosage. Sorry. And then in the first year, right? And for the first 6 months, you can give 30 grams of NPK. That's a little bit for the first 6 months. So in the first 6 months, not every month, you give 30 grams. For the first 6 months, in that whole period, you space out how much you're going to give it. Because remember, it's a little plant in the beginning. 30 grams, yes. And NPK, it could be a normal 12-8-24 blend. Because now, at this point, we're looking for the roots to develop and we're looking for leaves to develop. We want to have a strong plant, right? The N is for nitrogen, The P is potassium, and the P is phosphorus, and the K is potassium, right? So we're looking for healthy plants, good roots, good leaves, and then eventually we'll have to up the K, because the K is a potassium, and that is what helps with your fruit and flower set, right? And then afterward, within the next few years, you can always add, you can go up in the next 6 months. After the second 6 months, you can double how much you were putting up the first one. And then the second year, you use 100 grams for the year, over, you split it up. Most of the times we fertilize at the beginning and at the end of the rainy season. Beginning, yes. So like every 6 months. So it's like twice, kind of like twice a year. You don't want to fertilize. You don't want to fertilize when outside and your plant is very dry. Right? Chemical reactions happen around the plant and with the fertilizer, and it burns. I know you know. It burns the plant. It burns around the plant. The plant has to have enough water within its system to take up the fertilizer that you put on. It's also advisable that when you're fertilizing, you make a little depression, or like a little drain around, and you put your fertilizer in and you cover it back, right? Instead of just leaving it. This is because a lot of the fertilizers, they dissipate. What's the word? They evaporate into the air, and you lose again, affecting your pocket. Because if you put your fertilizer down and you just leave it out in the air, and in the rain comes, it washes it away, then you're going to be saying, "Oh, this is not working for me. What nonsense she was speaking. I had to go back and put a next set of fertilizer, all because you did not place it properly." Right? So now I think if anybody has any questions on what we said so far, we can. Yes, ma'am.
Fertilizer be delivered through drip if you have drip
Yes, you can.
irrigation?
Yes, you can.
Right.
You will just have to calculate how much of what you would get, because you won't be fertilizing every day. So you'd have to decide when it is that you're going to fertilize and how. So you can do that.
Chief, can I add something? Eh?
You sure?
We've seen that the nitrogen fertilizer really encourages anthracnose.
In
So,
the rainy season.
mhm,
That's why I was saying that you fertilize at the beginning of the rainy season and at the end of the rainy season, not during. So if it so what happens is that when it's raining, right? The the rain, how do I explain this and not be too technical? So the rain, there is nitrogen in the air. Just there's nitrogen everywhere. Just normally, right? When it rains, you have a lot of nitrogen in the air, right? And that nitrogen is now um available to the plants, right? When it is that you have nitrogen in your soil, and you add more nitrogen, you have more nitrogen now coming in from the atmosphere. Nitrogen is an element that is responsible for quick growth, right? So for your leaves and for your cells, but it's quick growth, right? No, quick growth needs to be balanced with strength, right? If you just have a lot of nitrogen, what happens is that your cells in your plant reproduces quickly. They go fast, 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 but they're not strong, right? Because they don't have the K and the other elements that would give them the strength, right? So because of that, you have any kind of little fungus or bacteria or anything around that drops on your plant now, and I mean they're all in the air. Your plant is fighting every day, every minute of every day, it's fighting something, just like our bodies. But now, because you have now given so much nitrogen that you have like a sore, it have like a weak spot, right? So when the nitrogen, when the anthracnose fungus drops on it, then it's very easy for it to get in and to spread. No? We understand? So that is why you have to be very careful about how and when you fertilize, right? So that's why I'm saying at the end of the dry season, when you're coming into rainy season, and at the end of the rainy season, right, to give your plants some strength to make it through the dry season. Right? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, on our farm, what we do, we don't use nitrogen at all with our mature plants.
Right.
We only use the K and the
And the
P,
P, right.
and we add a little bit more calcium
Mm-hmm.
to it.
Right.
Mm.
So you see, with her trees are already big, they're already mature, and then now you have the plant will be able to capture enough nitrogen from the atmosphere, and then she's supplementing with the strength and the other one for the flowers and fruiting. So then it's good. So that's a good practice. But what I would want for everybody to do is I'm giving you the basic the basic principles of things. But look at your trees, look at your farm, look at how they respond to different things. And then you can come back like how Miss Williams will come and tell me, I don't use nitrogen at all. You can come and you can say, well, Miss St. Louis, I tried this, and this is what happened. So the information that you're being given is so that you have the information and that you can make the most informed decisions, right? I think now maybe Kason, we could go to the field. But just before we go, just let me explain one small part of the pruning after you establish, right? Because a lot of the times we wait, we wait for we wait for the we wait for your plant now to get to be a big, huge plant before you even think about pruning. But you can prune a small plant, not small like this, you know, but like 1 year into growing, into the first year of growing, you can prune your plant, right? So when your plant gets to be about, probably about 4 feet, 3 feet, so about that, right? 1 foot from the ground. So wherever your ground is, imagine this is 1 foot. Imagine here is 1 foot, right? So between the ground and 1 foot, you prune off all of these, right? You leave nothing on this, right? And you let your plant grow up. As it grows, then we will go into further pruning, which we will show as we go in the field.